It's not supposed to go into the red. Welcome back to Living with a Classic. It's beautiful summer morning out here. It's time to work on these two cars. Well, mostly work on the green XJ6 because I think I may have fixed this XJ12 already. As you know, the XJ12 had a little bit of a charging issue. We'll get to that a little bit later because I think it's actually working now. The XJ6 also has a charging issue. 2 weeks ago, I went on a parts run with it, and on the way back I got stuck on the highway a little bit with some traffic, and as you do, you watch the temperature gauge, and I noticed that the voltage was really high. I thought, okay, that must be the gauge. Smith's gauges, tapped on it, stayed the same. Then I remembered I have a 123 Plus, the Tune Plus that connects to Bluetooth, so I checked the app, and yes, it was charging really high, but just as I started the app, everything came down and it was charging normally again. So I didn't think about it. I just drove it home. Then I let it sit over the weekend, and on the Monday, I loaded the kids up into it, take them to daycare in the morning, and it just pegged the gauge. And then I checked the app right away, and it was 17 volts. So I haven't driven it since. I have 2 spare alternators I picked up from a good friend of mine. They're used, but they should be working. And if you follow along on the green XJ6, you know that the whole point of that car is also, I'm keeping it on the road, but we're doing it a little bit on the cheap. We're not restoring things and putting brand new expensive parts, because the alternators for these, the big ones, are pretty expensive. So I bought a good friend of mine some lunch, and I got 2 used alternators. I think that was a very good deal. Let's fire up the XJ6, see if it still overcharges. If it does, we're just going to run it for like a second or so. I don't want to fry anything. And when I started up on that Monday, I only ran it for like 30 seconds. So we'll do that. If it's still doing it, we'll swap in one of my used alternators. Before we do, we're going to prepare some things. So I have my meter here already set. The car's really filthy. I haven't been able to move it to wash it. It's all covered in pollen and everything. But I want to pop the bonnet here so that we can quickly put the meters on the battery. See if we can actually maybe get them on there already a little bit. Let's see. This is just my simple multimeter. I don't want to use my fancy one either in case. Oh, look at that. There's some fuzziness right there. Hope it didn't cook the battery. Let's get this one as well. We'll just lay that onto there for now. See, we are getting 12.3, so that's pretty good. Let's fire it up and see if it still pegs the gauge. Choke is a little bit on because last time I just ran it for 30 seconds. So you see, it's not supposed to go into the red. Very quickly, just check the battery. The voltage is 17.5. So not good at all. Don't want to fry my 123 or anything else. Yeah, you saw that peg the gauge, so not good at all. Let's disconnect the battery and get this out of here. This is also a used alternator. It's run for about 6,000, 7,000 kilometers, something like that. It's from a V12, so it's always not charged that great at idle just because of the different pulley size. But we'll put a different one on. You guys might think I'm a little bit crazy, but it's just what I'm doing with this car. The whole idea from the beginning was a daily driver classic that doesn't, cost an arm or a leg. I could do everything to this car and make it a perfect car, but then I wouldn't want to drive it. But if this alternator doesn't work, I have actually thought about putting a generic alternator on there. just like a modern one, make my own brackets and get that to work, because it doesn't have to be original on this car, it just needs to charge. But we're going to see, just for fun, what's the battery now? 13. We'll see. Luckily this battery is actually pretty old. I don't really know how old, but I've had this car for, is it 3 years now? And it was already an old battery then. But even in the coldest of winter, it does crank this thing over. So swapping the alternator on one of these is very easy. You have a nice adjuster here. We'll loosen that. Get this belt off here. 2 positive connections here, and then the exciter wire for the light. And then there is a long bolt going through the bottom of here. So let's go have a look at the 2 spare alternators I have, see which one we're going to use, and put this all together. So I have these 2. This one, they know was charging well, it was good. This one was also charging, but they said the bearing was a little bit noisy in it. I actually think it sounds more quiet than the other one, but, well, yeah. Let's see. I actually think that one is quiet. But we'll use this one because this one we know as well. However, this one has been rebuilt at some point. There's some new parts in here, but probably the old one burnt a little bit because it melted the cover. So my plan is to take the cover from the other one, put that on here. These are, I believe they are ACR, ACR 14s or something. I think it's like a 45 amp Lucas, which is enough. I don't have anything special on the car, no electric coolant fan, nothing like that, no AC, just needs to power the ignition and the lights. So I'll swap the covers over, get the other alternator off, and then we'll get this on and see if it charges better. I swapped covers on the one that I think is good, and I just pressed this apart a little bit so it's easier to get on. Like I said, but it is like a 5-minute job to swap alternators on these cars, so even if this one doesn't work, it's not that big of a deal. We have another one. Let me see. And I cleaned all the connections as well, and I dropped the bolt, of course. I'm not sure how many of you guys remember when I actually put this cart together, like 3.5 years ago something. It was the first project car on the channel, and then it was, you know, getting a car on the road for not that much money to just enjoy, and I've sort of tried to keep it that way with it. There are still upgrades I want to do. We're going to do the interior and carpets and things, but I'm going to do the carpets myself. And actually, last week, I picked up some samples, so we're going to have a look at that in probably the end of summer or something, and see which color I'm going to use and all of that. I think you guys are going to be a little bit surprised by my decision, at least. Let's see. That one is... threaded. I'm going to thread this on, and then the belt fits. That's good. Get the belt on, tighten that up, get the connectors on this thing, then we'll fire it up, and hopefully we have a good alternator. Got the other alternator in place. I forgot about one thing, that I put a different belt on when I put that alternator on a couple of years ago. I remember I was just doing what I had laying around. This one's from a V12, so it had a little bit of a big pulley, and that's also why someone could say, okay, why didn't you just replace the parts in here? Well, because it was never really that good. It charged really well while you were driving, but in the winter, if you were idling, this thing has pretty low idle, and you had, you know, heat on and everything, this thing wasn't spinning fast enough because of the bigger pulley. This should not be a problem with this one. So I had to put on the original belt, so that's fine, all tightened up. Let's connect up the battery, see that it hopefully charges as it should, and yeah, really hope so, because it'd be nice to drive this thing a little bit again. I do miss it. It has been very nice to drive the XJ12, and we're going to get to the XJ12 part of the video in a little bit. I'm driving it for 2 weeks now as my daily, but I always miss this thing. Plus, I do want to do the comparison video of the XJ6 with the Rover P6 V8. Let's see. Could be a little bit flooded just because we've run it so many times with full choke. But the ignition light is on. That's really good. Ignition light goes off. Let's start what this little gauge does in here. It's always very slow to creep up. Except before when it shot up pretty quickly. There. Pretty much right there in the middle. So let's see what the multimeter says. Everything looks good with the belts. The alternator is nice and quiet. Yes, there is an exhaust leak. Yes, I'm gonna fix it. It goes away once it's warmed up. But I am gonna fix it. I have different manifolds for it. 13.9, almost 14 volts. Really not bad at all. Let's see if we can get that shoved in somewhere. That and 14. That's really good. Let's see what the gauge says in there. Because I know in the XJ12, when it's about 13.7, it's about the middle of the gauge. Yeah. That's charging very well. We'll let this thing run for a little bit and just charge up the battery, and also so the choke totally turns off. The AED has been turned off for a little bit, so down there, once the engine is fully warmed up, the idle's about 750. We're still charging really nicely and coming with temperature, so I'd call that fixed. Now let's move on to the XJ12. Really happy that this thing is charging as it should now. It's going to get a bath later tonight, so it looks nice and can go back into the morning school runs. Perfect car for that, because it's, even though it's summer here, mornings, early mornings are pretty cool still, so this car is nice to drive then with no AC. On to this one. I've been using it daily now for 2 weeks, and I think I fixed the issue because it's been fine for 2 weeks, but let me show you what that was all about. If you remember correctly, this thing, it would charge fine when cold, then once you drove it for a while and put some loads on, it would just die off. It would charge okay while you're driving down the road, but idle it wouldn't. So about 4 years ago, I swapped out the alternator. You can't even see it. It's down there. It's a brand new Lucas one for Series 3, so it's a more powerful one, and all the cables and everything for it were new, and it was charging fine then for a while. Then I didn't drive the car for about 2 years, and last summer when I was driving a bit, it wasn't charging as well. If I turned it on, like you do if it's sitting in the sun, I will crank it up and I'll put on max AC for a while before I go away in it, you know, pack the kids in that and everything, and then it would, you know, start misfiring and everything because it would just have about 10 volts in the battery. However, it seemed to be a very easy fix. I just cleaned up some of the earth points on the engine down below, and the belt was a little loose. I never heard a squeal, but I think while you were driving down the road, it was slipping a little bit. Not that you could hear it, but it was. So the belt is tight now, everything else is working, and we can fire it up. Basically, sitting idling with everything on, you know, electric coolant fan, AC, so then the idle's pretty low. Let me see what else. You know, the lights, the blower and everything. It will run at 13.7 volts, which I think is pretty good for being, you know, a car of this age and everything. And it doesn't go below that, so, you know, start turning things off, it will go up towards 14 more. But that 13.7 isn't bad. Takes a while for it to go up. You see now it's starting to charge. And it will sit right around the 13 mark on there, which is a little bit higher in real life. See, but the gauge reads a little low as well. But I've been driving around with the multimeter for about a week, and I checked it a lot, and yeah, it is charging well. So you see, it will come up a little bit around 13 right there. And then if I put some loads on, it will go down a tiny bit. So we'll put on headlights. I have a manual switch here for my electric coolant fan. Put that on. You hear the engine note change a little bit as the alternator loads up. But you see, we're still staying there at 13. We will put on the AC. And I mean, this is a 750 RPM idle. In gear, that is, you see, that is quite low. But we're still staying right there on 13. Even if the fan's on high, it will move down a tiny bit. But now we have every big electrical load on, and that's basically where it will stay. So really, really happy with that. Seems to be working as it should, and the AC is still ice cold in this car, so it's been perfect on these warm days. So 2 of my 70's XJs are working as they should and can be used as summer dailies. Now, well, the green one's year-round daily. This one's just summer, but they can do that can do the morning run, and that can do the afternoon run. So that is really nice. Hope you guys liked. It's a little bit of troubleshooting. Hopefully the alternator lasts for a bit. I do have another one, and after that, I don't know, we may put something generic on there. We'll see. But this one, I'm glad that the new one, because it's quite expensive, a new Lucas one for the XJ12. I'm glad that it's still working, and that gives me more hope towards the new ones. It was just probably some bad connections. Anyways, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Till next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.